All right, welcome back to the after work video. Last video, we read the section about IBGP. We learned about the scaling issues you can have with IBGP because it has a full mesh requirement, which can make scaling difficult if you have a physical link between every router, but luckily you can use confederation or route reflection to overcome that limitation. We also learned about why you need IBGP and you can't just use your IGP because your IGP isn't designed to handle large numbers of routes. So when you learn a large number of routes through EBGP, if you were to just put all of those routes into your IGP, you could very easily overload your IGP. So you use IBGP because BGP is a protocol designed to handle large numbers of routes, and IGPs aren't necessarily designed to do that. All right, and then in addition to that, we learned how to use the built-in help on Junos OS to kind of figure out how to configure something that's not familiar. So if there's ever a mental blip on a test or on the job, kind of how to kind of jog your memory and figure out what is required. All right, so diving back into it, where we left off last was trying to configure this topology. So it's a bit of a diversion. Unfortunately, there's no exercise for this topology. It was just kind of brought up as a point of discussion for all this text that I read earlier. But I figured it would be an interesting exercise to just go through and try to configure it up the way that it looks like it needs to be configured. Of course, I do have to be very conscious of the time I spend studying. I can't spend all my time studying about BGP when there's QoS, device infrastructure, all sorts of other topics on the exam. But I think this kind of ties in a lot of concepts together, so it might be worth a diversion just to make sure that I am more prepared. Okay, so edit interfaces AE0 set. Now, one thing I need to know how to do is to add an interface to the port channel. So that's something I wasn't able to figure out just using the help alone. Let me just go into edit interface 000 and set, I think it's aggregated, or set. Yeah, I mean, I'll just look it up. I guess kind of keeping with that same theme, I'll see if there's a way to look it up using the help menu. I think last time I just ran out of time because it was during lunch break, so I only got an hour. But there should be some more time now. So here's a high level for, let's see here, reference and purpose. So we'll start here and we'll go with aggregate, or aggregated Ethernet. So oops, and it's an invalid regular expression, of course. I need to be valid. Let's do something like that. Ah, here we go. Perfect. So Here we go. So I think I found it just by using the resources that are going to be available to me during the test. I think the help here will be available, but managing windows and stuff is just going to be a lot less convenient than just being on here. So let's read what this says here, and I think this will be just about everything I need to configure link aggregation. So configuring Ethernet link aggregation. On fast Ethernet, tri-rate Ethernet copper, Gigabit Ethernet, and 10 gigabit Ethernet interfaces on M-series and T-series routers, you can associate a physical interface with an aggregated Ethernet interface. To enable the aggregated link, include the 802.3 AD statement at the edit interfaces interface name fast ether options or interfaces interface name gig ether options hierarchy level. Edit interfaces interface name, and then of course we're going to use the Gigger Ethernet or gig ether options because we got gig interfaces, not fast Ethernet. And there it is. That's as simple as it is. We saw that there was I went into the AE0 hierarchy level, but that configuration wouldn't have done anything because there were no ports added to AE0, but this is how you go ahead and do that. You specify the interface instance number X to complete the link association. X can be from 0 to 127 for a total of 128 aggregated interfaces. You must also configure a statement defining AEX at the edit interfaces hierarchy level, and that's the menu I was in before. You can optionally specify other physical properties that apply specifically to the aggregated Ethernet interfaces. For details, see Configuring Ethernet Interfaces. And let's see how we can go ahead and look at this, but only using because you can see this is the exact same doc I was looking at in the web browser here. But the difference is it's on the command line. So clearly I know how to look for this in the web browser. You just use the navigation links or you just do a Google search, but on a command line, it'd be interesting to know how to see the related documentation. And for a sample configuration, see example configuring aggregated Ethernet interfaces. And this would be the one that would be really interesting to see because on the test, I can just pull up an example of how it needs to be configured. If they give me a BGP troubleshooting scenario, I can just look up an example of how to configure EBGP or something specific to EBGP, and I can compare it to what's on, and if it doesn't match the example, then I got something I can think about. Note, in general, aggregated Ethernet bundles support the features available on all supported interfaces that can become a member link within the bundle. As an exception, Gigabit Ethernet IQ features and some newer Gigabit Ethernet features are not supported in aggregate Ethernet bundles. Gigabit Ethernet IQ and SFP interfaces can be member links, but IQ- and SFP- specific features are not supported on the aggregate Ethernet bundle, even if all member links individually support those features. To delete an aggregated Ethernet interface from the configuration, issue the delete interfaces AEX command at the edit hierarchy level in configuration mode. So this is all pretty obvious. If you delete an aggregated Ethernet interface from the configuration, the Juno software removes the configuration statements related to AEX and sets this interface to down state. However, the aggregated Ethernet interface is not deleted until you delete the chassis aggregated devices Ethernet device count configuration statement. Okay, that's good to know. But now I know how to configure those links to be part of the aggregated interface. So I just need to figure out what links they were. I believe it's 1 and 2, but I'll double check. So it's going to be -2 of whatever's listed there. So yep, it's going to be 1 and 2, and those are going to be going to Memphis. So I'm going to configure private, edit 000, whoops. Yeah. So I'll put a description on them. Well, I'll just leave the description off because it's going to be just a part of the port channels where I want the description to go. So edit, well, actually I'm going to do a description so I can do well, I'll just start with the gig options. I'm kind of indecisive, but here's the command I needed, so I'll type it out more slowly. There we go. So let's look at the help menu for that. Gigabit Ethernet interface specific options. So this is not necessarily for configuring a port channel. It can be for all sorts of things, including flow control, including auto negotiation, source filtering, all sorts of stuff. But what we are interested in is 802.3 AD, which is the IEEE open standard for link aggregation. All right, and now we get to choose the name. So we're going to go with AE0. And now is where we can choose if we want LACP. But of course, if it's configured at a more higher global level, it will inherit down and have LACP. But that's not something I chose to set up. All right, so that's as easy as it is to configure a port channel. Aggregated Ethernet just means port channel. It's just the Cisco, the Juniper way of saying it. They have different language, Junipers and Cisco's do, but let's go ahead and commit that. Actually, yeah, well, let's make an edit to the AE0 and set the description on that to, and it's going to, I forget, Memphis. All right, and now let's add a description to the other link, which is going to be 3. And I believe this is, let's see here, Jackson. Perfect, show pipe compare. All right, now we've got our descriptions on there. So one thing I like to do when I do a show int terse is pipe match based on, because if you do a show int terse, you get a lot of extra interfaces. But those I find are kind of a bit noisy. I don't like seeing them all. So usually I like to do this, but unfortunately, if I've got port channels, of course, if I do that, I'm not going to see the port channel, but yeah. So you can always do it in 2 commands. Just look at all your physical interfaces and then your port channels. All right, so next step, I wanted to see if I could get to a related help section. So fortunately, it looks like it's not quite as easy as copying and pasting. Yeah, so it's unfortunately a little bit more difficult to use the command line to navigate through that than it is in a browser, which of course is to be expected. But moving on to the next, and I can put all the IPs on there and stuff now on this one. There's no reason I can't do that. Probably even the BGP config. So configure private, edit, interface E0 at 0. Oh, and they actually didn't give IP addresses to use, but this looks like they've got .1. They don't have any 192. No, they've got 192/16. They got the whole /16. I mean, let's just go with 10.10.10.1 and 10.10.10.2. That sounds good. So set family INET address 10.10. Or 10.10.1.1. And then this is going to be a /30. And then top edit int 3. Oh, actually it's going to be 2. Top show int descriptions. Whoops. Run show int descriptions. Oh. Yeah, it's going to be, because it's only 2 minus what the number is. So it's 4. So it's going to be port 2, not port 3. So edit int 3, show pipe display set relative. Now I can do delete, yes, up, edit 2. Now I've got everything here. Paste in really nice. So show pipe compare. There's that change in there. Then I added the IP address to the aggregated Ethernet port. So now I need to configure the connection to Jackson. All right, so yep, that looks good. Looks like there's some extra routes that they want to eventually be added into this topology. So I'm going to go ahead and put that into on a loopback address. And then when it comes to redistributing routes into BGP, I'll call that one out specifically using that route filter. So edit 0 unit 0, set family INET address. Oops, and it's going to be got to be a host address. Now you can have, this is going to be interesting, maybe a little bit mind-blowing for people who are beginners, but it is very possible for this to be a valid host address. And the way you would have that is you would have a subnet mask. In fact, this looks like well, it might be. Let's see. So if we've got 192.168.234.1234.1234.1234. So if we've got a /23, this is the difference between our host addresses and our, so you toggle these bits here to get host addresses, but these are all the bits that show what network these host addresses are a part of. So if it's .22, you're going to have the 16-bit on. So this is for 128, 64, 32, 16. So that's going to be the 5th bit from the here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you'll also have the 4-bit on. So you'll have this one. So it's going to look like this. And then the first host address is going to be .0, is going to be .1. The network address is going to be .0. So yep, sure enough, in this case, this is actually a network address. It's not a host address. So we're going to need to delete this. And we're going to need to assign a host address from that subnet. But as I was saying, there are cases you can have .0 be a valid host address. So one of the ways this would be possible is if you had a network address, kind of like, you can think of it like, if I count from 1 to 9, I'm never going to have a number that has 0 as its last number. But if I count to 10, if I count to 20, now I have that number in there. So let me think about this quick. I might have needed to prepare before I just kind of pulled this off the top of my head. That's what you get when you try to do math on the fly. So it's interesting. It's called System 1 and System 2 thinking. So if you want to do System 2 thinking, which is what I'm trying to do now, don't have a webcam. Don't have a webcam pointed at your face, or don't upload it publicly to YouTube, which I'm going to do. So like and subscribe, because I'm going to try to do math without pre-preparing for it. I'm going to do it badly and fail. All right, so let's see here. Yeah. So let's just hypothetically say that 192.168.0.0 is a host address. So the question is, what would the mask need to be in order for that to be a host address? And what would the network address and what would the broadcast address be? So the broadcast address, so we know that if we have a slash, we know that if we have a slash 24, then it cannot be a .0. It's impossible to have this scenario with any network mask longer than a slash 24. And I say longer because the network mask is here. So here's the first octet, second octet, it's all 1. So if I have a slash 24, I have a longer, if I have a slash 25, slash 26, slash 27, that's a longer network mask, extends further over this way. So you cannot have a .0 host address with a network, with a subnet mask longer than a slash 23. You can't even have it with a 24. So let's see if you can have it with a slash 23. So here's a slash 23 right here that I had before. So what would be the, and let's just pretend for a moment that we had, all right, let's just make it really easy. And let's go ahead and make all of these zeros. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we've got our network address, right? It's 192.168.0.0/23, right? We've got a broadcast address, right? 192.168.255.255/23, right? So how many host addresses do we have? Well, we have 512 host addresses, which is a lot of host addresses. In fact, it's so many host addresses that between here and here, we have a host address that ends in 0. So where's that host address? Well, here's the first usable host address, first host address. Here's the second host address. Here's a third host address. So it's just all different toggling of these values from 1 to 0. Well, this is still part of the host address. The subnet mask does not extend out past 23. So what happens if I do that? Well, 192.168.1.0/23. So what kind of address is that? Is that a network address? Well, this was the network address. Is that a broadcast address? Well, obviously not. It's a host address. So this is an example of how you can have host addresses that end in .0. So that's just something that if you're new to subnetting, if you're learning it for the first time, and if it wasn't already confusing enough, and you thought you were getting a hang of it, well, now you don't understand it. But yeah, one thing I will say in regards to subnetting is if you're in networking school, if you're learning network engineering on your own, and you don't know how to subnet really well, yes, you can get by. You can use a calculator. You can just memorize a small pool of the ones you'll be looking at every day. But in my personal opinion, and I'm a little bit of a math guy, I kind of liked math, so I kind of empathize with anyone who really truly hates subnetting. But in my personal opinion, like, I would say get really comfortable with subnetting, because it's just gonna kind of help things make more sense. You know, it's all bits, learning binary, understanding what that means, being able to do it quick, and it's just kind of impressive. There's a website that I use, subnetting.net. I used this back in networking school, and this was just really, really useful for me. So I definitely recommend, if you want to work professionally in network engineering, learn to subnet, get really good at it. It's just all it's gonna do is make you look better and make you more comfortable with the subnet material. The only downside is, yeah, it's gonna be a little bit difficult if you're not already good at it, and it might take some time going through drills like this to really get good at it. So once you're really comfortable with it, so this is going to be a 242. So, is that right? That's incorrect. So once you're more comfortable than I appear to be, 248. Wait, I gotta think about this. So 255, 254. What? Why is it not 248? 254. So it's going to be 128, 192, 224, 240, 248, 252, 255. I thought it would be, I thought 252 was I thought 252 was a, oh, 254 is going to be the /23. Okay, so yeah, there's 252. So yeah, I mean, you don't need to be a pro at subnetting to work professionally as a subnetter. I think I was at one point. I actually had a high score on these, but this is, I think, good evidence that getting really good at subnetting and doing it in your head is, you know, a little bit like, it's a good skill. It'll impress people. It'll make you feel more like you belong. But I understand if somebody wouldn't want to do it. But in the same vein, I definitely recommend it. And I did it myself when I was in networking school. Unfortunately, a lot of what I learned seemed to not have stayed with me so much, but I'm on to bigger and better things. All right, so let's see here. But I was able to properly explain why you can have host addresses that are .0. I was actually, as I said before attempting that explanation, I was actually kind of worried I would not be able to explain that, but I think I did an okay job of that, hopefully. So, okay, next is the, show pipe display set. So we've got it in the ether channel, we've got the description, we've got the IP address, we've got the, the extra route. We don't have the BGP configuration, so I think I'm going to set that up. So edit protocols, BGP, group, IBGP. And now I'm going to set type internal, set neighbor, .2, then set neighbor 2.2. Okay, and I think that's all I'll need for now. I'll kind of go ahead and add those policies to filter these routes into, to redistribute these routes into BGP kind of as its own activity. So let's see here. Now I need to go up and then set routing options, autonomous system, 604. And I think that will be enough for now, and I'll just move on to the next ones. I know in the other examples there was more configured under here, but I think it was just the pure AS, which is only needed for EBGP. So I think the configuration for IBGP is pretty skimpy. All right, so Miami looks like it's good to go. Let's get through Memphis and then Jackson, and then I think I might need to take a break and come back at this in the next video tomorrow. So set autonomous system, set routing options, 604, and then edit. Well, let me set the chassis aggregated Ethernet devices, and then Ethernet device count 3. And now edit interfaces, 0 options, set to AE. So we're going to do AE0, AE1, and AE2. So let's see what this is. I think it's 0 and 1. Yep, 0 and 1. E0. All right. Now this will belong to AU1. This as well. So we've got two more devices to two more ports to configure. 0 and 1, 2 and 3. Now it's time for 4 and 5. All right, and edit and zoom the description to Biloxi, Mississippi, right? I'm not from that area of the country, but I think I've been there once. Let's see here. Top, edit interfaces, G1, set descriptions to Jackson. Oops. And now, okay, and now instead of going to Jackson, this is going to go to Atlanta. All right, and now it's time for IP addressing. All right, and we'll just make that a /30. I said that's not specified, but there's no reason for it not to be a /30. Oh, that's interesting. It looks like, yeah, I didn't assign anything to a A3, so I'm not sure where A3 came from, but luckily it's just as easy as doing a show pipe display set relative, copying everything under that, and then deleting everything. Now moving it over to E2. That's why that's my favorite command, is show pipe display set relative. Makes everything really nice and easy. All right, so the last thing is, oh, it looks like that connection to Jackson, I actually used the wrong IP address. This is going to be A1, and it's going to be on the units. All right, so yeah, this isn't correct. So the correct one is going to be 2.2.2.2. So this is going to be A2. All right, and then last interface is going to be the loopback. All right, and then time for the BGP config. All right. So that's it for Memphis. Oh, and yep, for sure enough, they gave me a network address to assign to my loopback address. So let's take a look at that closer. So this is going to be 172.24, and then the 16 bit's going to be on. So we got the 128, 64, 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, 0. So, and it's a /20, which is going to be 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. It's going to put it here. So, yep, we can see if it were a /19, we could have an extra, well, let's see. Oh, yeah, okay. So you can see, as to my previous point, we're actually going to have a lot of different addresses that have .zeros in it, because we could have any of these on. .17, 172.24.17.0. Is that a network address? Nope. It's a host address in the 172.24.16.0/20 subnet. And that's because we're toggling bits that are not within the cutoff of the network portion and the host portion. So all these bits on for a value of 15, 15 plus 16, so 31, 172.24.31.0/20. Is that a host address or is that a network address? It ends in .0. Still a host address because the only bits I've toggled are the bits to the right of the subnet division, which is after the 20th bit. But all of those bits still only belong to the third octet. So the last octet is still all zeros. So you have a host address, yes, but the last octet is going to be 0. All right, so I'm going to make that change. All right, I'm going to configure one more before it's starting to get kind of late for me. Hopefully this will commit without any issues. So last one, Jackson, Tennessee, Jackson, Tennessee. I'm not from that area of the country. I think it's Jackson, Tennessee. Yep. Well, could be Jackson, Texas. Could be anything really. But it seems like we're all in Tennessee. Memphis is in Tennessee. I know that. All right. Configure private. And right, so we need to test this aggregate Ethernet channels. And then it's Ethernet device count 3. And now it's going to be edit int. Oh, actually only 2 because, yeah. Okay, so now I'll edit the non-port channel first. It's going to be this, and it's going to be G2. Perfect. So that's GE2. What about GE? Oh, and I'll put the IP address on this one as well. All right, so what's the next one? It's going to be to Memphis, so Jackson, so that's going to be 1, and it's going to be 0. 0 and 1 are going to Memphis. And I'm sure it's just well, actually, it seems like there is a gap, actually, so let's see which ones. These are on Jackson. So Jackson is going to be 654, GE4, and GE3. Yep, GE4 and GE3. All right, so now it's time to add IP addressing to the aggregated interfaces. Oh, and descriptions, of course. Okay. All right, one last interface to configure. That's the loopback. All right, now it's time to configure BGP. And this time I'm going to need 2 groups. I'm going to need one for IBGP connections and one for EBGP connections, which I actually needed in Memphis as well. So I'm going to need to go back and correct that before this video is done. Oh, I did edit instead of set. That's something that we sometimes kind of switch between set and edit mode, as I like to do sometimes. You'll sometimes accidentally use one when you meant to use the other. But it's not a tough fix. So I think this is good to go. Commit and quit. Hopefully that commits, and unfortunately I'll need to go back and do the Memphis one before I can call it quits. I'll need to, of course, take the neighborship out of IBGP if it's in there. And it looks like, oh, I just completely ignored that EBGP. Edit group EBGP. And maybe I did create it? I guess I don't remember. Nope, didn't think I did. So set type external, set peer AS 931, and then set relative. So yeah, I think that's good to go. Oh, I put on my hat, I put on my shirt, I put on my gloves, I put on my scarf, I put on my shoes, I put on my socks. Guess it's time to leave the house. Well, got to put on my pants too, I guess. Neighbor statement. Perhaps the most important statement. All right, so now it's good to commit. We won't see those EBGP connections going up because the site isn't configured, but at this point, each of these routers should have 2 IBGP sessions that have been established. So right now it looks like it does not have anything established. Everything's in connect, which is interesting that it's not in idle. Or sorry, it wouldn't be in idle, but that it's not in active. It's kind of interesting that it's stuck in connect instead of in active. Kind of makes me wonder if there's here showing terse pipe match. Can I just do inet? Yeah, I can do that to, let's see here, G dash and then E. Oh, Biloxi didn't get port channels set up on it for some reason. Oh, Biloxi didn't get configured at all somehow. That's interesting because I thought I did configure Biloxi, but apparently not. I mean, I can do that. It's not going to be too much of a hassle. One thing I'm going to get in the habit of doing, so I don't have issues when I come back next time, is make a superfluous commit so that when I come back to it tomorrow and I see that that host name goes back to what it was before, I know that my last commit was rolled back. And if it's still there, if I choose to, I can roll it back and start without that in there, or I can just leave that on there. But since there's that bug with GNS sometimes rolling back the last commit, having a superfluous commit so that it just rolls back something that doesn't matter, I think is a good strategy. And we'll see if it pays off if I come back to this and this -1 is missing from the host names. But until then, I'm going to actually finish this up here. It's kind of, wasn't expecting to have to do that, but I will go the extra mile. All right, so now I'm sure it's going to be 0, 1. Oh, actually, yeah, 0, 1, and then 2, 0, 1, and 2. Well, I could have sworn I did that. I wonder if I configured a extra device. Did I configure Miami instead, or did I, like, where did that configuration go? It's kind of interesting. I mean, if I configured Miami instead, then it's just a matter of rolling that configuration back and then repasting it onto another one. Ah, yeah, so that is what I did. I configured Miami instead, but in production that would be really bad news, but in the lab, that's news I can handle because I just got to roll it back. And then I just got to paste it into Memphis. Oh, not Memphis. And this is why that superfluous commit can help too into Biloxi. Okay, so now hopefully we'll see. Oh, it looks like I stopped my command, but hopefully these will now go into established now that I've got the correct device configured. Oops, and I might have been missing some configuration here. Oh, that's interesting. That's still in connect. I mean, of course, I can go ahead and ping across the wire on each of them and see if that works. I think I'll do that. So let me just take a look at the neighbors statements here. So, of course, in order for BGP to form, it's got to be able to ping those. No route to host. So already that's bad news. Huh. Oh, but 2.2 is fine. Oh, it looks like somehow the IP address didn't make it onto the Ether channel. All right, so hopefully that'll do it. Perfect. Oh, wait. Nope, not perfect. Not yet. Ah, here we go. There we go. So active connect. Oh, ooh, open sent, OpenConfirm. That's interesting. So I got an OpenConfirm. That's really rare. Normally you'll only see active connect, open sent, and then write to establish. It's really rare that you'll actually see a OpenConfirm. So I think I definitely leveled up, and I definitely have a lot of bragging rights that I actually got to see an OpenConfirm. That's quite unusual. Awesome. So next step is going to be kind of looking into that other connection. So let's see if I can now ping both of the neighbors in here. Looks good. All right, I can ping both my neighbors, so so 2 out of 3 of my connections here will be up, right? Yeah, and they are. So Memphis is going to have, so it looks like the only issue is there's a issue between Memphis and Jackson. So I'll figure that out before I end this video. So the IP addresses are all there. Let's try to ping all the neighbors, the IBGP neighbors. Looks good. Oh, so here's the issue. It looks like I can't ping that neighbor, 2.2.2.1. So let's see what made it on here. We can just filter out. Okay, so it looks like it made it onto there, onto the port channel. Aha, but I can see I'm trying to form a neighborship with .2 instead of .1. But it's not just going to be as simple as that, though, because on this side, if I do a show configuration pipe display set pipe match, aha, so yeah, it looks like both of them are configured with .2, but this one over here needs to be configured with .1. So it's not the neighbor statement that's wrong, it's the actual configuration on the port that's wrong. Perfect. So now hopefully all of the IBGP neighbors on all of the devices will be active. Hopefully I can just, yep, so I can specify by the group which ones I want to have a summary of. Perfect, so here's the IBGP neighbors, and they're both active. On Jackson, they're both active. And then we saw earlier that they were both active in Biloxi as well, but I'll check that again, and then I'll end the video. Next video, we'll be crossing autonomous systems, and we'll be looking at setting up those other devices. So stay tuned.